Hello everyone, my name is Hannah. Welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be an in-depth spoilery recap of Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. So I feel like recaps are really nice to watch right before you dive into a sequel instead of rereading the whole book. I know that I find that really helpful. A lot of times I'm like, I just have to reread the book because I can't remember certain things that happen or I want the story to be super fresh. So this recap is going to go in depth and in detail about all of the things that happen in Empire of the Vampire. So this will be a very spoilery video. If you have not read this book and you don't want to be spoiled for it, don't watch this video. Okay, so the book opens with Gabriel de Leon in captivity, and he is being held prisoner. And he has been requested to tell his tale to the historian Jean-Francois, who is a vampire. And so we find out that Gabriel de Leon is actually like a vampire hunter kind of thing. They call him a silver saint, and they keep referring to him as the last silver saint. And so we're trying to figure out kind of what led to this point. And so as he begins to tell his tale, it's told in multiple timelines. So we have the present timeline when Gabriel is in prison and he's telling his tale to Jean-Francois. And then we have the far past timeline of when Gabriel is like a young boy. We start off when he's like quite young. I think he's only like 10 or 11 or something at the beginning, and then we gradually get to where he's about 15 years old. And then there's another timeline that is when he's about 32 years old, which is 3 years prior to the present timeline. And so it kind of jumps around a little bit, but it does make the story come together and keep like the mystery of like what's going on and how we got to this point alive. So I kind of like that it has 3 different timelines. So at the very beginning of his tale, he talks about day's death, which is this like endless night, endless darkness, and it's kind of when all of the vampires started becoming like a real issue. So Gabriel has 2 younger sisters. He has Amelie, and then his youngest sister is Celine. And Amelie goes missing, and she's gone for several days, and they're obviously very worried about her. And when she comes back, she is actually an undead creature of the night. She is trying to drink blood. She's like falling over herself to like lap up blood off the street, and it's a very distressing image, as you can imagine. So Gabriel ends up putting his hands on her, and she starts to like sizzle and boil and burn, and then somebody burns her, not alive because she's undead, but you know what I mean. And we kind of flash forward into that far past timeline where he is about 15 years old, and he ends up getting hot and heavy with his like girlfriend at the time, and ends up sort of a little bit drinking some of her blood. And they find out then that he is actually what they call a pale blood. So he has like the blood of vampires in his veins, but he's still like part human. And so he has this like thirst for blood, but he's still pretty human. And so they end up taking him away to this kind of school called San Michan, where he is being trained to become a silver saint. And eventually his thirst for blood will like overtake him and he'll have to be killed. But until that time, he is going to fight and hunt and kill vampires. It's a very religious place. They worship I think they call it like the Great Redeemer and the 7 Martyrs, and basically it's like heavily religious, but they're using their religion as kind of a weapon against these vampires. And their ultimate enemy is the Forever King, which is like the Vampire King and his children, and just vampires in general. So as a pale blood, he has to smoke this stuff called Sanctus, where it kind of staves off his thirst, so he doesn't need to drink blood. It's like powdered blood kind of, just to kind of give him like some extra strength and abilities and stuff, and then also so that he doesn't have to drink blood, because if he drinks blood, it's kind of the end. So then we go to a different timeline. So now it's only 3 years in the past. So I call this the near past timeline. And we're piecing together a little bit that Gabriel has kind of lost his faith entirely, and he's no longer associated with the Silver Saints, although he is like a legendary Silver Saint at this point. He ends up running into an old friend from San Michan called Chloe. And Chloe is with this like group of other people, and they're on this kind of mysterious mission, and she obviously knows that Gabriel is really good at what he does, and so she kind of asks for his help so that he can get this group of people on their way so they can complete this like kind of dire mission that she's not really telling him very much about. Eventually, we discover that she claims that one of the people in their party knows where the Holy Grail is, and that the Holy Grail is kind of the answer to solving Day's death and like defeating the vampires once and for all. So one of the people in their party, Dior Lachance, is the person who they claim knows where the Holy Grail is, and so they're trying to get Dior to San Michan and like to get the Holy Grail basically so that they can defeat Day's death. But then one of the Forever King's children, they call them a Prince of Forever, Danton, comes and attacks the group, basically trying to get to Dior because they have this information that they don't want uncovered. On page 155, Danton says, "De Leon, you live? How?" And Gabriel says, "God didn't want me, and the devil was afraid to open the door." And I love that. So at this point, it's like a battle against Danton. Gabriel has a talking sword, a sentient sword called Ash Drinker, which is kind of a cool detail. They're able to escape though. They don't defeat Danton, but they're able to get away and like hopefully keep him off their trail. And then again, we jump timelines back to the far past when Gabriel is kind of a student training at San Michan, and we meet the character Astrid Renier. So Astrid is what they call a sister novice. She is not a pale blood or like not able to be a silver saint at all, but she is helping out the order and helping out San Michan, and she's kind of been exiled because she is actually the emperor's bastard, and the empress does not like that, doesn't want her around, and so she's been exiled here, so she's pretty bitter about that, but she's making the best of it. She meets Gabriel and they have this witty banter about them and this like sort of friendship starting, and she agrees to help Gabriel kind of look into his bloodline because most pale bloods derive from 4 different vampire lines, and each line gives them some sort of special ability, either extra super strength or the ability to like influence people or like get into their minds and see into their minds, stuff like that. And when Gabriel was tested, he didn't have any of those things, and so they dubbed him a frail blood. However, he is not quite sure that that is the truth. He has this strange ability called sanguimancy, which is like where if he touches a vampire, he can basically like burn them alive and like boil their blood right there. And it's kind of an unheard of power. And so it's not one of the 4 main bloodlines powers. And so he's like, something else is going on here. So Astrid agrees to look into it for him if he trains her good friend Chloe, who wants to learn like how to wield a blade and how to fight and kind of defend herself and stuff. And so Gabriel agrees to help train Chloe, and that's how him and Chloe meet, and then Astrid and Chloe will look into his bloodline. Then we jump again to the near past, and we're back with Chloe and Dior and the group, and then Gabriel as he's like kind of trying to help them out because of Chloe. They get into quite the fight here, and someone ends up with some very mortal wounds. They're about to die, and Gabriel's like, let the man die in peace, but Dior is trying to get to them, and Dior gets a cut in his hand and then wipes his blood on the wounds, and they heal. And so we then find out that Dior doesn't know where the Holy Grail is. Dior is the Holy Grail. There was some like mention in the text and the difference between essence meaning lifeblood and essence meaning like a child born of their essence was a little bit misconstrued in the translation there, and so they realized that it's not an actual Holy Grail cup that they're looking for. It's actually a person, a descendant of their great Redeemer, Son of God. They keep getting followed too by this creature that they call Lyathi, and she's like a blood witch, I think Chloe calls her. She's not really human. She's very vampiric, but she's kind of fighting against the vampires, and so they've kind of got 2 enemies coming at them at once, and there's kind of like this like what's going on with her. She's not really a vampire, but she's also not a good guy. Like something's off about her. She ends up warning them, Lyathi ends up warning the group that Danton is close. And once he shows up, basically everybody dies except for Gabriel and Dior. Everybody ends up dying in these crazy ways, everybody in their party. And Chloe ends up saying, Dior is all that matters, Gabe. And then she ends up getting let go. Like they're like hanging off of this cliff basically. And so she lets go so that Gabriel can save Dior. And then we end up finding out that Dior is not a young boy like Gabriel had originally thought. Dior is a girl. So, since everybody in Dior's party is now dead and gone, Gabriel feels the need to then protect her and make sure that she gets to go where she needs to go and is kind of safe, because obviously one of the Forever King's children is after them, and that's not a good thing. Jumping back in the timeline to the days of San Michan and Gabriel training as a Silver Saint, he gets set on this mission to find a vampire, and he's with his, like, posse. His mentor comes with, and then his, like, another initiate is with them, and they go to this party, and he attacks the vampire without getting any information from her and kind of does something he's not supposed to do, and it pisses off everybody. And they do then find out that the vampire that they were hunting and they have been tracking for a while now is actually Lore Voss, which is a Prince of Forever. It is one of the Forever King's daughters. So they're obviously very powerful, and in this little kerfuffle, Gabriel's master ends up getting his arm completely ripped off and his eye completely pulverized and poked out of his body. However, Gabriel does manage to save him. He also finds a message and intercepts a message that Lore was carrying, and it is an invasion plan, which is good because they didn't know that there was going to be an invasion. So they have that information now. So he did kind of fuck up, but also at the same time, he got some, like, very valuable information out of it. He meets then with Astrid and Chloe, and they find out that not only is Gabriel not a frail blood, but he is from this very rare bloodline, a fifth bloodline that not very many people know very much about, called the Asani, which translated from that language means faithless. Back when we are learning that Dior is the Holy Grail, basically, they say that the descendant of the Great Redeemer, so God's son's descendant, they call her Esan, which means faith, and then it's just like a link that Dior is from the bloodline of faith, and then Gabriel is from the bloodline of faithless. At this time, Gabriel and Astrid have kind of set aside their friendliness toward each other and have moved into the physical, so they start sleeping together, which is very against the rules for them. Gabriel is not supposed to fall in love with any woman, take no wife, whatever they say, and then Astrid, of course, as a sister novice, is the same. She is not allowed to sleep with anyone. So then everybody at San Michan is going on this mission to, like, go to this invasion that they see that is planned, and Gabriel is left behind because he messed up so bad during the last mission, so he is left behind with, like, maybe 24 people, and everybody else is going to go fight the big baddies at this invasion. However, Gabriel decodes something and realizes that the invasion is not happening where everybody thought it was, and is in fact happening somewhere else. And so he takes those 24 people, and they go and they fight this big epic battle, 24 against thousands, and they manage to come out of it pretty victorious, which is kind of incredible, which is why Gabriel becomes kind of legendary, because it was 24 against several thousand. Gabriel uses his sanguimancy because Lore Voss is there, one of the Prince of Forever, and Gabriel kills her, annihilates her, puts her, like, turns her into dust, and the Forever King is there and sees his child killed, and then vows vengeance on Gabe and says, "I have forever, boy, I am forever." And so Gabriel's he's marked by the Forever King, which is not great. Because of this, Gabriel is then knighted a Silver Saint and becomes this, like, big legend, and continues to be quite legendary. So then Gabe and Astrid again are sleeping together, and Astrid offers up a drink of her blood to him, which he partakes in. Astrid ends up getting pregnant while they're at San Michan. Several years have passed from that time of the, like, big legendary battle and all of that, but she gets pregnant, and so therefore they get caught, and they are excommunicated from San Michan. They are cast out, they have to leave, they gotta go. At that point, we jump back to the near past, so it's Gabe and Dior, and they're kind of trekking through the wilderness, fighting for their lives here. We do get a bit more of Dior's backstory and how she kind of ended up being where she is now and discovering about her power. So her mother was not really a great mother to her, and so Dior ended up kind of on the streets and was a little bit of a gutter rat, and she ends up discovering her power because the girl that she is with ends up getting hurt, and so Dior was also bleeding and puts her hands on the wounds. Like, she didn't know that she could do that, but she ends up healing the wounds, and then they like call her a witch, and then they're all after her because she has this power that she shouldn't have. And so then Dior is on the run, and then that's how she meets up with Chloe and the crew. But yeah, at this point, Gabriel has lost his Sanctus and his pipe, and so he is really struggling. He's feeling it very physically, and he can't give in and can't drink anybody's blood because he keeps saying never again. And so he's in a lot of pain. However, they get to this like market, and the person there wants Dior's blood, which is obviously, as we know, quite valuable. Gabriel says no, they leave, and then Dior ends up going back and stealing what he needs. Eventually, they make it to Chateau Aveline, which is where they meet up with some people from Gabriel's past from San Michan, which is Aaron DeCoste and Baptiste. So these two were kicked out of San Michan for being gay lovers, and that Gabriel fought with Aaron DeCoste, and so that's how, like, they weren't friends, but kind of like frenemies, pretty much. But yeah, they were meant to be like flogged and killed, but they ended up being able to escape because of this like big invasion thing, and that's when they left. So then they're running Chateau Aveline. But then, of course, Danton comes and says everybody in the chateau is going to die a most painful death unless they give up Dior to him, at which point Dior says, I'm not having anybody else die for me, and she runs away. Before she makes the final decision to run away, though, we get the reveal that Dior has known that Astrid and Gabriel's daughter, Patience, are dead. After Gabriel and Astrid leave San Michan because they're kicked out, they go to Chateau Aveline and they end up getting married. They have their baby there, and they're just kind of living a kind of quiet, peaceful life for the next 11 years when the Forever King shows up and he says, you know, I am forever. So he's going to get his vengeance on Gabriel for killing his daughter Laure. And so he ends up killing Patience, his daughter, and then turning Astrid into a dead, capital D. So she's like about to become a vampire, about to turn or something. So Gabriel ends up having to be the one to like officially kill her. It's very traumatic, as you can imagine. And so Dior is like, I can't fill this void for you. I can't be, you know, I can't be this for you. And I can't let anybody else die for me. So I'm going to leave. And so she flees without Gabriel knowing. Danton kind of finds out that she has fled and he's chasing after her, when, of course, Gabriel comes to the rescue. Danton then attacks Gabe, and it's kind of looking not great for him when all of a sudden Dior gets Ash Drinker, Gabriel's talking sword, and runs Danton through, and the blade was soaked in Dior's blood, which it's very hard to kill a Prince of Forever, but not for the Holy Grail. Once she's got that blade soaked in his blood, he basically, like, combusts. It's very epic, a good scene to reread. And then, lo and behold, we find out that Chloe is not dead. She is actually alive. She survived the fall and was nursed back to health. And so little Chloe Sauvage, the little believer, is back in the game and ready to take Dior to finish Day's death. They get back to San Michan, and then that is where Gabriel finds out that they actually intend to kill Dior. That is the ritual, that is what the ritual calls for in order to end Day's death, and so they're going to kill Dior. Gabriel is not about that. He tries to go and save Dior. However, people have other plans because they want Day's death to end. So Greyhand was Gabriel's mentor from when he was a young boy, ends up sentencing him to death. They take him to this bridge, I think they call it Heaven's Bridge or something, where they cut his throat, kill him, dump him off the bridge, and he's dead, except Lyathi. Lyathi comes and heals him, gives him her, like, vampire blood, which brings him, like, stitches his wounds up and whatever, and they find out that Lyathi has, like, they call it ancien blood, like ancient blood, and so there's still a little bit of a mystery surrounding her, and then she says, Lyathi is not my name, it's my title. I thought you would have recognized me, and takes her mask off. The whole bottom of her face is all messed up, but Gabriel recognizes her as his baby sister, Celine. Mind blown. What? Who? Couldn't have seen that coming. I didn't, at least. Basically, she gives him all of these cryptic and vague warnings that the people in San Michan have no idea what they're doing. You can't kill Dior. Like, he needs to go save her. And so he goes in there, and of course they like watched him die, slit his throat, and so they're all like, what the heck is going on here? And Gabriel, being the kind of vengeful person that he is, ends up killing them all, including Chloe, who still at this point thinks that she's doing the right thing, kills everybody, and saves Dior. And then we end in the present timeline back with Gabriel captured and telling this tale to Jean-Francois. And they're kind of wrapping things up for the day. He's still like, I'm still gonna need to have this story of like all of this stuff that happens and all of this stuff that we still don't know, like how we got to where we are. And so they kind of say until tomorrow. However, Gabriel gives one final try at killing Jean-Francois with his sanguimancy, but it doesn't end up working out. And then Gabriel just says, until tomorrow, vampire. Also, throughout the near past timeline, Gabriel is kind of haunted by these images of Astrid. It's kind of like a hallucination of her, but as a vampire, and just saying like she misses him, let her in, and stuff like that. And it's just like a few scenes here and there where he's just like very haunted by her, which I didn't know where to fit that into the whole like storyline and stuff, because it just happens randomly, and before knowing everything that you know, you're kind of like, what's going on there? Because at the time you kind of think that Astrid is alive. So anyways, that is something that happens. I don't know if that'll continue in book 2, who knows? But there you have it. That is the in-depth recap that I have for you for Empire of the Vampire. I hope I included everything. I hope I didn't get anything incorrect. I did recently just reread this, so it's very fresh in my mind, and I've taken extensive notes on it. So hopefully it was a pretty good recap for you. I will be reading Empire of the Damned very, very soon, and I'll do a recap for that one as well, because I know by the time that we get the 3rd Empire book, it could be years from now, because the gap between Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned was several years. So I'm going to make that recap. But yeah, I think it'll be really helpful to have both of these for when the 3rd book inevitably comes out. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching this recap. I hope it helps you, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!